This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. It's your host, Tim Link, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. I got one of my all-time favorite people, one of the best authors, one of the best writers, one of the best creative, spiritual, calming minds in this crazy world of ours. My good friend Linda Anderson is going to be on here shortly. And you know Linda, she's a New York Times bestselling author. She's a columnist, written some of the best books out there, Angel Animals being one of them. So a good friend and one of the best people to talk to. So we're going to talk to Linda in a moment. So everybody hang tight. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
It's designerpetsweaters.com. Hand-knitted designer sweaters for your precious pup or cool cat. Beautiful couture patterns for your pets, including custom-knitted formal wear, casual wear, yachting, and even sports-themed. Many designer pet sweaters include feathered tammy hats, top hats, and a lot of sparkle. Each sweater includes leg loops, front paw sleeves, and leash opening. Visit designerpetsweaters.com to order your four-legged fashions today. Large or small, we fit them all. designerpetsweaters.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. And join us now is New York Times bestselling author and columnist and all-around great writer and wonderful person, Linda Anderson. Linda, welcome back to the show.
Oh, well, thank you, Tim. What a great introduction. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. Well, it's well-deserved, and you can pay me a little something later. No, just kidding. So it's exciting to talk to you again. It's been a little while, but obviously everybody knows you guys, your wonderful Angel series, Angel Animals, Angel Horses, Angel Dogs, Angel Cats, all the great books that have that you've put out over the years that give us joy and hope and happy tears and all the wonderful things the books bring about. And now you've got this great blog that's out called Animals Are Soul, animalsaresoul.blog. So tell us a little bit about the blog itself.
Well, I'm actually a columnist for the blog, Animals Are Soul, and it's published by Eckankar, and it's just a tremendous vehicle for people to be able to explore the whole spiritual connections that they have with animals. In the blog, there are stories from people all over the world who are experiencing their spiritual relationship with animals and seeing animals as these eternal spiritual beings who are gracing their lives and bringing so much love and peace into their lives.
And so we tell you're a columnist for Eckankar. Tell us a little bit about who Eckankar is and how the blog came about.
Well, Eckankar is actually a spiritual teaching. It's a global teaching in over 120 countries around the world, and it's called The Path of Spiritual Freedom. And it's the blog that Eckankar is publishing and that I'm writing for now is a spiritual resource for people of all faiths and backgrounds. And for me, it just hits all the right notes when it comes to people being able to explore these connections that they know are there, but maybe not many people talk about this. You know, you hear all kinds of things about what to feed your pet and their personality even, but you don't hear a whole lot about how you and that pet have a bond that goes far beyond this life and a bond that is an interconnection, which I know you know all about, Tim.
Right.
The interconnection that people have with animals. And so these stories just sort of verify the kinds of experiences that people are having, and they're written in a very entertaining as well as informative and inspiring way. So I'm just thrilled to be a part of it.
Yeah, you know, that's the important. I mean, there's so many different important messages here, but we're not talking about a site or when we talk about a path to spiritual freedom, we're not talking about this unknown dynamic, But I think that we're all on this path. We're all on this path to discover who we are spiritually and what's going on around us from a spiritual nature, and trying to find a path to understand it all. And then you add the next layer, which are animals, which we love and we have that heart connection with. And we desperately want to know more about them and build those greater bonds and those greater relationships and understand what our path is together.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think one of the things I enjoy watching is, when I read these stories from people, is that the relationship that they have with animals, when they understand that it's actually spiritual in nature, they begin to understand so much about their lives and about themselves. Like many times when I've talked to some of the people who write their stories, they'll tell me about something that the animal did, and then I'll just ask a simple question. I'll say, okay, well, what was going on in your life at that time? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, you just, they get that aha moment, and they go, oh, this was all connected. That animal came into my life and did this thing at exactly the time when I was going through this and when I really needed that to help me to understand what was happening, or to give me comfort or console me when I was going through something. And they realize then that these puzzle pieces are all connected.
Absolutely. And I've written about this many times, and I know it's a topic that I've touted for years, because I'm a firm believer that every living being, whether it's human, animal, or whatever it may be, we have a purpose. There's a purpose for us being here. Some are very broad in nature, some are very deep in meaning, and some are very simple, the message that we're trying to get out. The difference, I believe, between animals and ourselves is animals understand their purpose much better than we do, and they stick to it and try to fulfill that purpose every day, where perhaps as humans we spend thousands of dollars in therapy and trying to figure it all out. but our animals are, they're always there, and I think you hit it spot on. It's like, that's a great question you ask. It's like, okay, what was going on in your life at that time? And then they realize, oh my gosh, my animal brought that to me.
Yes, exactly. And I totally agree with you about how animals are very purpose-driven. They really seem to know exactly what they're there for, and they come into your life at exactly the right time. And then if you can just kind of wake up a little bit and
Yes.
look around you, you could say, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I see why they were there. And then, some people have these hero stories where animals do something very specific and heroic and totally unexpected, like save their lives in some way. And then they get it that animal had a purpose. But, it's not always the hero stories. A lot of times it's the day-to-day stories. At least it's been that way for me for the most part. It's been an animal that just is there, doing what it does, what it seems to do naturally, but in a way that brings something special and wonderful and amazing to my life, an everyday miracle.
Yeah, and I think that's a very valid point. I mean, as you said, I call them the grandiose things, the hero stories you were talking about, or if an animal got us through a really tough situation, a life-changing situation, they were our mentor, our muse, or our healer. If we can recognize that early and allow that to happen, we're going to be much better for it. But as humans, we often wait too long and have to reflect back on it and realize that they brought that to us. But as you mentioned, some of them are the simple things, getting us through a day, a particularly challenging day. They have, that ability to be able to do that for us.
It is really true. And I think one of the things I love about the Animals Are Soul blog is that it has spiritual tools embedded into these stories that anybody can use. One of my favorites is there's a sacred ancient love song to God called Hugh. It's spelled H-U, and it's sung like a chant. And if I could demonstrate it, I think your listeners would enjoy singing it to their animals, because I love singing this to animals. It just almost immediately lights up the spiritual connection. So if you want to sing Hugh for yourself or to an animal, you just take a nice deep breath, and on the outgoing breath, you go, Hugh. And you just keep repeating that over and over for a little while, and then you can get quiet. And it's sort of like, thoughts come to mind, and just understandings and insights, and all kinds of just beautiful things begin to happen when you sing this for yourself or to an animal. And like I have a story in the blog about our newest cat. I'm calling her new, but she's actually 12 years old. And we had decided that after our last cat had passed away, we decided that because we were getting older, we wanted to get an older cat. And we didn't really want to keep our animals tend to live a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to we looked all over the place. I couldn't find just the right cat. There was just nothing was clicking. And in Eckankar, there's a spiritual guide called the Mahanta, the Inner Master, and I was able to get a dream with the help of the Mahanta. And in that dream, I saw this beautiful gray cat with a long fur and a long, curly, fluffy tail. I've never seen a cat like this in my life. It's just beautiful. And I was holding this cat in my arms, and I could hear this voice from the Inner Master saying, "This is your cat." And so I just, woke up from the dream and almost immediately got on the internet looking, where is this cat? I found an animal shelter that was actually near where I was working. And I looked at it, and it looked like the cat that was in my dream. And I went over to this animal shelter, and when I got there, I went in to look. They took me into this place where all these cats were, and this cat came flying across the room toward me. Now, later I found out that this cat never came to anybody because she was so shy, so introverted. She'd been there for 3 months. She'd lost absolutely everything, including all her fur, because she came so matted. And was hiding in the kitty litter box all the time. And and I said, "Did you dream about me too?" It was just amazing. And so I sat down and I started to sing Hugh to her. And she just focused on me. It was like this instant soul-to-soul connection. And we were there spiritually, the two of us. And this cat, I won't go into the whole story because it's on the blog and people can read it, but this cat is perfect for us. We found out that she's actually a very rare breed of cat called a Nebelung. Have you ever heard of that?
I don't believe so.
I hadn't either, and our vet hadn't even heard of this. And so this cat is very shy, very introverted, extremely loyal, like they pick their person and that's it. And she is just wonderful. We named her Sweetie. And when we walked out of the shelter with her, the receptionist and the other people in the shelter, they were all in tears. They were crying. They were so happy because they never thought this cat would ever get adopted. And she's just been perfect for us. I mean, there's, as is with any animal, there's many, many more stories beyond that, but that's the gist of it, how that people wouldn't know. You could have a dream, and in the dream, you could meet that next pet, that soul that is destined and meant to be with you. It's just remarkable.
Absolutely. Dream state is, I look at it as a form of meditation. Meditation, similar to what you did. Meditation is allowing anything that allows your conscious mind to shut off and allows your subconscious to open up. And when we're talking about our dream state in particular, that's a natural. We let that conscious mind shut off, the subconscious opens up, and it's a perfect portal for messages to come through, for animals to communicate with us, both animals that are in present form as well as animals that have made their transition. And if we then take that and don't overanalyze that dream and just go with it, then it makes sense. Here she was right there, right and perfect for you, right down the road, basically, and appeared right at the perfect time.
This absolutely rare breed in this little animal shelter for months, and just, with no hope of ever finding a home. I mean, it's just like, okay, yeah, I'm there.
Absolutely.
I got it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great stories. And so the blog then, Animals Are Our Soul, covers these things, these topics. And I know that it covers a lot of, deep and meaningful questions I know you've gotten answered or asked many, many times over the years from a spiritual and a religious and a open standpoint. And I know I get asked quite often. these serious, deep questions, but the stories make them light. Questions like, do animals have souls, and do animals live on? Do they have an afterlife? And I think the brilliant thing that what you do in your writings, as well as what we see on the blog, is we give stories and make it to all right to ask these questions and give you answers through the stories, and not make it such a scary topic to talk about, as humans have a hard time talking about these things.
That is so true, and I really like the way you emphasize telling stories, because I just think stories are a whole lot better than philosophizing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, you can tell a story and a person has the free will to be able to get the message if they want to, at whatever level they want to get it. And I love being open. You just can't meet anybody who loves to hear people tell stories more than I do. It's just like I was just born to be a story myself and to hear other people's stories, because I just love it. And I listen to their stories. And what I've loved over the years is, over the decades, I have just heard so many stories, literally thousands of stories from people. And what always interests me is that people have the experience of animals as being soul, this eternal being that lives on beyond death of the physical body. And then they'll even say to me, and that cat came back to me. And then they'll look at you and say, "You think I'm crazy?"
Yeah.
And I'll say, "No, you said that to the right person."
That's right. But Linda, the thing I find even fascinating is when you tell somebody a story, or they're telling their story to you or to anyone else, and you tell them that, no, that's not crazy. And usually what follows is, I have a similar story, or I've been waiting for someone to tell me that was okay to think that way. They're looking for that. And the stories, I think, break down that barrier, give some real truth and honesty. You're not storytelling. You're not making up something. These are real things that have happened to you. And then when someone finds out, hey, I'm not the only one out there, it makes it much better, much easier to believe. And it does expand your heart and your spirituality and your mind, and knowing that it's true.
It is true. And what I love about this blog and your work and our work over the years is that these are not just stories from a certain type of person. I mean, we have gotten stories, and I know you have too, from people in all walks of life, every part of the globe. I mean, in this blog has stories from people in Africa and India and the UK and, I mean, you name it, Australia, all over the place. This is not one type of person who has these experiences. These are people everywhere. And they finally find an outlet where they can tell their story and have validation for what they've experienced. And it's a relief for people. They appreciate it so much when they're able to read stories about these experiences. And even if they can't recognize it in their own lives, they realize that this animal is bringing love into my life. And no matter what's going on in the world, no matter how bleak things might look, there's this animal, this beautiful soul with their hearts wide open, who is showing me that I am loved. I am always loved. Never am I without being loved. And what a terrific message.
It's the most important message of all.
It is.
Absolutely.
It absolutely is.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back with Linda Anderson, talk to her a little bit more about Animals Are Our Soul blog. And I also want to talk to Linda about her writing as now columnist, and then, of course, as a best-selling author. So everybody hang tight. We'll be right back after this commercial break. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact.
I have 2 dogs, Sam and Bailey. Both are golden retrievers. Poor Sam, he was a mess. Always itching. His paws were soaking wet all day from just constant licking. He had bald spots on his back. I just don't like putting shots and steroids into your dog all the time. DINOVITE.com. Dinovite is nutrition. Probably 2 weeks after he started Dinovite, I started seeing great improvements, and today 99% of his issues are non-existent. It's amazing stuff. Since Bailey has been 12 weeks old, he's been a Dynovite dog, and he has 0 issues today. He won't eat his food without Dynovite. When I get out the Dynovite, my dogs actually salivate, like I'm getting them a treat. They drool over it. Dynovite is the best thing you can do for your dog.
You won't believe how happy your dog will be.
I get my Dynovite from DINOVITE.com.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Continuing our chat with New York Times bestselling author and now columnist Linda Anderson. The blog she writes for animalsaresold.blog. And so, Linda, when people go to the blog, we talked previously about the stories and the messages and things that are shared there. What can they expect, and what do you hope they walk away from after going to the blog, reading the stories, and maybe opening themselves up a little bit more spiritually?
I think what happens is that, for one thing, it's just like, there's all these studies that show that when you read a story about an animal or see one on TV or whatever that is really heart-opening, it does everything for you. It makes you feel calmer. It makes you feel happier. It makes you feel like all is right with the world, that it's all going to be okay. All of that happens because these animals carry that vibration of love. And these stories carry that vibration of love as well. And so, when you come to this, I think what you're going to find is kindred spirits. Mm-hmm. You're just going to find people, you're going to go, oh, yeah, I'm not the only one. There are lots of people. And then you're just going to have a wonderful time. It just brings such a smile to your face. And it gives you hope because, when things look very bleak and dark, you want to see the light, and that's what this blog is full of. It's just full of light, and it's full of the Holy Spirit, of the sound of God, and the rhythms of life, and the way that life works in your favor, even though you may not realize it at the time. All of these things are there, and they're embedded in these beautiful stories.
And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful message. And like you said, whether we're always going to have trying times. There's always something going to be going on in the world or going on with us individually. And when you go to the blog and you're reading these stories, the blog, it's not beating you over the head with spirituality. It's not beating you over the head with the word God or religion or any of this. That's not what the point is. It's the message and what the animals bring in that message that can heal and open your heart and realize you're not alone in the world.
Wow, you said it beautifully. I wish I would have thought of exactly what you just said. I'm going to have to transcribe this interview so I can get... It's like, okay, you can be working on a project. You know how that is. You're working on a project, and then somebody else can describe it so succinctly.
Well, feel free to use it. Just throw me a small royalty. That's fine.
Of course. And you think, why couldn't I think of that?
There you go. There you go. Oh, goodness.
Well, another thing I really like, and this is just an unusual thing that people don't always think of, but animals are growing spiritually too. And that's just a wonderful aspect of the stories in this blog, because you see an animal many times in these stories that has just been beaten down by life. And, there's this wonderful story called Healing for the Heart of a Horse. And I love horse stories. I don't know about you, but I just love horse stories. And this poor horse was so neglected and abused and all kinds of things that had gone on before this lovely teenage girl, the horse came into her life. And it's just such an expansion of consciousness where, because this girl understood the spiritual connection between her and the horse and used these spiritual techniques that are taught in Eckankar with the horse, she was able to help that horse go from the absolutely the worst conditions of life for a horse, a retired racing horse, by the way, that had gone through so much. And she was able to take that horse and help him go on a journey to such wonderful healing. And you say to yourself, yeah, these things are possible, and these animals are growing too. They're learning. I can trust. I can love. And, there was I was thinking about you actually when I was rereading the story today, because she talked about, at the end of the story, she said, if you don't mind, I'd just like to read this part to you because it's so beautiful. Mm-hmm. She says, distrustful, skinny, abused horse became a fat, happy cuddle bunny. Another writer at Mel's barn hired a pet psychic to communicate telepathically with him. She said Mel told her he used to think people were instruments of torment for horses. Mm. But then a young, tall girl with long, dark hair came along and showed him that people are capable of love. Wow. Isn't that wonderful?
That is very wonderful. That is, that is the message. And I think that's beautiful, in so many ways. When we talk about, we think we're on this journey alone, and not only as an individual, but also with our animals. But as you said, they're growing spiritually. They're growing and wanting to release as well. I do a lot of work with rescue organizations across the world, and I used to be a president of a humane society. And one of the biggest messages I give people that adopt a rescue animal is allow them to understand and learn their past, but don't allow them to live in that past. They're looking to live in that present moment with you to grow and expand and build a beautiful life together. So don't be concerned about, whether they were abused or if they had a tough life or maybe they had a good life in the past. Don't live in that past. Live in that present. Allow them to do that as well. And I think we can be their guides, their teachers, their healers as much as they bring to us.
Absolutely. And it's a dual journey. When I help people to work on their stories, that's one of the things I emphasize with people. If you can go there, if that works for you, is to look at it as a dual journey. It's you growing and learning, and this animal growing and learning, and then there's the intersection of you and this animal on this journey and coming together to do something together that you could have never done alone.
Lovely. What a lovely message. What lovely teaching. That's fantastic. Well, Linda, then let me ask you, shifting gears a little bit, I want to pick your brain as a fantastic writer and author and columnist. How is it writing for the blog? How does that compare, writing columns and matching this up in a blog format compared to putting together a latest, greatest book or one of the other wonderful things you do as far as your writing is concerned?
Well, in a lot of ways, it's similar because, I'm writing about something I love. Mm-hmm. I have been so blessed in this lifetime to be able to do what I love. I mean, it's just pretty amazing, actually. Mm-hmm. I'm so grateful. And to be able to write about what I see and observe and what people tell me, I'm like a chronicler of life and life with animals. And when people are able to read what I write and relate to it and tell me their own stories, and it sparks something very deep inside of them, it is so satisfying. I know you know the same thing because of the books that you've written. How gratifying it is when people say, oh, yeah, and they get it, and then they go on to tell you their story. It actually is pretty similar in that respect. Now, just in terms of the logistics of it, blog stories tend to be shorter and, maybe a little bit more focused. You can't ramble quite as much. You kind of have to get to the point faster.
Right.
But I really, really enjoy it a lot. It's just and it's one of those types of writing that when you love it, you think that you've been working for maybe 15 minutes, and it's more like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then you say, okay, I must really love doing this because I haven't moved a muscle for 3 hours. I actually have to set a timer to get myself up out of the chair and move around because I get so absorbed in that world.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting to me.
Yeah, I think that's the fascinating thing about it. The stories are so compelling, so intriguing and heartfelt and how you put them together is wonderful. Like time passes by so quickly because you get so absorbed in them. But also, as you said, comparing your stories and your journeys and all the many things you've done with the animals and with your own animals, and now in addition with this, hearing other stories. I know that's been a big part of your writings over the years, but just sharing the journey together.
It is true, and I think one of the things I love about writing this blog, because it is my own spiritual path as well, it's really gratifying when people find that there's an actual spiritual teaching that, really does say animals are soul. It just comes right out and says it. And so many times I've had to comfort people who an animal would pass away, and they would try to talk to maybe somebody at their church or, to, person in authority or something, and they'd just be told, well, that animal's gone. That's
right.
it.
Right.
It's all over. Get over it. Go get another pet. All that kind of stuff that people say to each other. It's just fantastic. The featured writer, featured columnist for the blog is Sri Harold Klemp, and he's the spiritual leader of Ekankar, and he wrote this beautiful book called Animals Are Soul Too. And I just wanted to read one passage from I came across it today. It's real short, and he says, "The best way to listen to our animal companions is to see them as soul. This means recognizing their eternal nature and knowing that God loves them just as much as God loves you."
I love that.
Wow.
I love that.
Wow.
Yes. And who could debate that? Who can minimize that? We all know that. No, it doesn't matter what religious background or personal background, anything you come from. Animals are that common denominator. Animals are our heart connection. Mm-hmm. And for us to think anything less, that they don't go back to that same place that we go to is, to me, it's hard to imagine anybody think otherwise.
Very true. Yeah. I mean, I have worked in this field for over 20 years, and I've worked with people of any faith, any religious background, no faith, whatever. And it's exactly what you said. This is what we have in common. We have that connection with animals, and once you understand the spirituality of that connection with animals, it just doesn't matter what the dogma might say. All that matters is what you have experienced personally.
That's it. And that's the whole thing. It's what you get out of it, what you've experienced, what you know in your heart is true. And I know when I deal with grief counseling after an animal, or when an animal's making their transition or has made their transition, I try to let people know that the terminologies and the thoughts and the words of others really don't matter unless they touch you and mean something to you. So, whether we call an animal's soul, you can call it their soul, their spirit, their essence, their energy. You could say they go up to the universal space of love, or the rainbow bridge, or heaven, however you want to label it. It's all the same thing. We're all that same energy, that same love, and we all go back to that source, whatever that source may be. So whatever gives you comfort, whatever words you need or how you want to label it, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, if you realize it's love, and that love was here in body, and then once it's made its transition, it's always there for you afterwards. And if you know that to be true, then that's your meaning, and that is your truth.
It is so true. And I love that you use the word, what did you say, transition?
Transition. Yes, absolutely.
I love that. I just love that.
Yeah.
So, because it's not final. I mean, and, there are just so many examples and stories of people who have seen an animal in their dreams after the animal's made the transition, or they have had the experience of really seeing, just evidence that animal, that soul has returned to them in a different body, in a different form. In one of the stories in the blog that I wrote, I was writing about our two cockatiels, Sunshine and Sparkle. And after Sparkle made her transition, Sunshine would sit on the mantle where they used to sit, the two of them, and she used to groom him on the mantle while he was sitting there, and they were just so in love with each other. And after she was gone physically, he would look up in the air and he would follow a trajectory. And he just did this over and over again, follow around the ceiling like he's watching her flying around. And Alan and I would say, we can't see or hear, but he sure can.
That's it. Yeah, and I think animals, and I think that we as humans or human companions, I think we can see, feel, know, hear that they're there. I think the challenge lies in the fact that, first of all, animals are more accepting of that. I mean, they communicate when they're in body in that telepathic manner. So after they've transitioned, it's just natural for them to be able to still communicate and see each other and know that they're still around. And then the other aspect of that is us humans trusting it. I can't count how many times I said, okay, well, whether it's a dog or a horse or a cat or a bird, did you see them? Did you see a shadow? Did you see a gold or a silver orb, perhaps something shining in a surface that normally wouldn't have a reflection? Have you heard them? Have you felt the pitter-patter of the taps on the floor, on the stairway? Have you felt places that are warm to the touch, but all of a sudden you don't know why they would feel warm to the touch, or a blanket all of a sudden gets crumpled up? You don't understand why. And time again, they've seen something, they've known something, they've heard something, but they've doubted themselves. Or perhaps they were expecting to see it or hear it or feel it in a certain manner, and maybe the animal's communicating in a different manner. But once you sort of open up all these different things and they're like, yes, I have seen that, or yes, I have heard that, or I felt that, or know that, then it gives them that understanding and that comfort that, hey, you're not alone, and it is them, and they're always going to be around, and they're, your little angels now, and they're going to make their appearances whenever they need to give you a message, or if you need them, you call upon them to come around. And I think that once they understand it and know that this is okay, then they heal and they go through their grieving. They do their own healing and start to realize that, hey, they are actually always going to be around.
That is so true. I was thinking about a story that I read recently in the blog. It was called "The Cat with a Heart," and what you said reminded me of that, because this guy first he sees this shadow, and the cat's name was Shadow. And the cat he just sees this spark of light going across the room. First it's a cat, then it's a small sphere of light, and then it goes back into the form of a cat in their bedroom. And he's saying, it's like Shadow is still with us in spirit. And then he has this dream, and in the dream, Shadow says, I'm coming back. And he says, how am I going to find you? He's really worried about this. How am I going to find you? And this is it's just a wonderful story of how this cat communicated that he was coming back, and exactly how he would be able to recognize that it was this soul that had come back. And everything that this cat told him as soul in this dream, it all happened exactly the way the cat told him. And he's like, really? Because he's really funny with the way he writes it. He says stuff like, you gotta be kidding me, stuff like that. It's really funny.
Oh, goodness. Well, Linda, it's been, we're coming to the end of the show today. It's been a pleasure, as always, chatting with you. I chat all night long with you and share these wonderful stories. But I encourage everyone to go to the blog, animalsaresoul.blog. And, of course, check out Linda's books. Maybe that was what was leading me into the angel animals and all the other angel books for some more of her great work and great stories as well. But animalsaresoul.blog. Take a look at it. Learn a lot. Share your stories. Find out other stories that relate to you and your spiritual path that you're going down. It's a wonderful, wonderful blog. The messages and the stories and anything to do with animals has got to be good. Right, Linda?
Oh, absolutely. And write your comments after the stories, after you read them, and subscribe, and just really enjoy being with kindred spirits.
There you go. So it's animalsaresoul.blog. And so take a look at that. Linda Anderson, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for coming on the show again. It's so great to hear from you. And we look forward to continue to have chats with you into the future and read all your wonderful work and all the wonderful stuff you're doing out there, and especially all the wonderful stuff you do with the animals, of course.
Oh, thank you, Tim.
Well, we're coming to the end of the show today. I want to thank everyone for listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. While you're there, check out all the other wonderful shows and hosts on our network, which is Pet Life Radio. And there's a plethora of great entertainment there. If you have any questions, comments, ideas for this show, please email us. That's at PetLifeRadio.com, and we'll be glad to answer your questions, entertain your comments, and bring on the people you want to hear from most. So until next time, write a great story about the animals in your life. Put it in a book, a blog, an article, get the message out there, and who knows, you may be the next guest on Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Have a great day.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.